All right, guys, as promised, lucky enough to be joined by my Locked On NBA co-host, Rylan Stiles. I think this is the first time, Rylan, we've got to do this on our own podcast. So welcome to Locked On Knicks for the Thunder fans listening. I'm Gavin of the Locked On Knicks podcast, but pleasure to be talking to you, buddy.
Yeah, it's been great to have the Locked On NBA show on Saturday nights, talking about the NBA on a national scale. But this is the first time you've gotten to do it locally. So welcome to the Knicks fans on Locked On Thunder. But this is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a great matchup, as we already have seen them play and know how good of a matchup this is. But I'm still excited to see it again.
Yeah, I mean, let's start right there. You were, unless I'm mistaken, but I think I remember you saying this. You were in person for the first matchup between the two teams, and you were. I mentioned it when we did Locked On NBA for anyone who listens, but you're very complimentary of the Knicks, which I appreciated. Gracious in victory. But what were your takeaways seeing the Knicks in person in such a high leverage game, and how did you think Oklahoma City ultimately pulled it out?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was that I think that the Knicks have everything that they need to go win a championship. It's just going to be, can they get to the finish line healthy? And you know, we talked about it on Locked On NBA of that sometimes you might need to shuffle their rotation to where, you know, you're not playing these guys a ton, and maybe it hurts you in a regular season game, but in the end, you would sacrifice some of those regular season games where you're not playing your guys, 36, 37, 40 minutes a night. You would sacrifice that in order to be healthy at the end, because if you are healthy at the end, the Knicks can absolutely go win an NBA championship. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. So these are two teams that are really talented and two teams that have championship aspirations. I thought that the Thunder just did a good job of, kind of taking the punches from New York. The Knicks are going to have runs. They're going to have, massive performances. They have too many guys. Like Brunson wasn't even incredible as a scorer in that game. He was really good bending the defense as a playmaker, but as a scorer, he was not good. And so he'll have a great game on Friday for sure. And that's something that you didn't account for in that first matchup. So you just have to survive a little bit against New York, because eventually they're going to have to play their bench, and you've got to capitalize. That 7 minutes that Cam Payne was in there felt like the biggest win for the Thunder, and it felt like that's what caused them to win the game. So as long as you can keep it within striking distance for that moment, I think that the Thunder can, that would be what it takes to pull off another win.
Yeah, I think the depth is pretty clearly the separator between the two teams, and it's a testament to Oklahoma City, because as their fans point out in the comments, and I think I did mention on the show, but the fact that you guys don't have Chet, did not have Alex Caruso for that one, and it's as you said on your pod today, it's next man up every single time, and the Knicks don't necessarily have the talent to do that, or the coach who wants to embrace that mentality, and it gets them into trouble at points. The Oklahoma City, I noted it after that game, was the rare game where I'm like, screw it, play everyone 44 minutes. Like, let's go win this game. This feels like a playoff game. This feels like a finals game at times. It's one of the highest level games I've seen played all year. But Rylan, for you, it just feels like the norm at this point, because after that, you play the Celtics, you beat the Celtics, you play the Cavs within an inch, ultimately losing that one, ending the 15-game winning streak. What have you learned about Oklahoma City in this gauntlet? Because obviously you did have the NBA Cup run, so you got a little bit of a preview of what it's like to play this level of competition back to back to back. But this Oklahoma City team is going to sound like an insult, but I promise I intended as a compliment. Like, I think they played above their talent. Like, you look on paper, and without Chet, like, I don't think they should beat the Knicks. I don't think they should beat the Celtics. And yet, as a super young team, they win these games. And part of it is just that they've had the best player on the floor, and it's been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But like guys 2 through 5, like the Knicks should have them beat, the Celtics should have them beat, the Cavs should have them beat. And yet, to your point, they take every punch, and for the most part, pull out these games. So those are my takeaways. What have your takeaways been as they've gone through this incredible stretch of basketball?
Yeah, I think that, you can see that Shai clearly is one of the best players in basketball, arguably the best player in basketball, and in a star-driven league, that's going to be a lot to carry you. And I also just think that this team's defense is historic, and like if they were kind of the inverse of themselves right now, like where right now their defense is historic and their offense is, just top 10, no big deal. Like if they were reverse of, like, the offense was historic and the defense was just, 7th or something, people would be crowning this team immediately. I think that sometimes we just, like, look at their offense and grow these heavy concerns when, to your point, they're patchworking this offense together without Chet Holmgren, who is a big deal. Like his shooting gravity is big for spacing. His ability to create for himself is big for scoring, and he's still a talented playmaker from that center spot, just like Hartenstein is. So like offensively, they're still a work in progress. I think that they need to have their shooting numbers turn. They have the thing with the Thunder is they have capable shooters. I don't know that they have like sharpshooters, and that's what they have to figure out here in the next few weeks, because that's what it's going to take to win a championship, obviously. But the Thunder, you just have to appreciate their resilience and their ability to never say die, if you will, as like a kind of a cop out, because a lot of other teams will kind of roll over a little bit if they get down double digits. And this Thunder team has gone on a run here where they've gotten down double figures, five games in a row or whatever it was, and won all of them. That to me is the most impressive part, because you are building these battle scars that a young team needs to build in order to win in the playoffs. Because every year it takes improbable playoff wins to win a series. Dallas had a massive comeback, and that was, I believe, game 6 to beat Oklahoma City. It's going to take games that feel improbable, and the Thunder are winning improbable games right now.
Yeah, and their ability to close is so good, and it feels like there is just it's almost the magic of youth. Like, you don't know what you don't know, and it feels like they don't feel pressure in those situations. They're just kind of like, hey, this is all gravy, and they consistently execute down the stretch of games. And Shai is just, I mean, in the lineage of a Michael Jordan, in the lineage of a Kobe Bryant. I know those are big names throughout there, but it's just a cold-blooded killer. And I think Jalen Brunson has some of that too. He might just need a little bit more help, which we'll get into. But before we move on to the Knicks, what is the formula for beating Oklahoma City? Because it feels like let me know if maybe I missed a game, but I think literally every game they've lost this year has just been by the skin of their teeth. Last night against the Cavs, despite missing those two guys, plus AJ Mitchell was no exception. Where can they be beat down the stretch? And I know Cleveland's the way they attacked Oklahoma City with the double bigs is pretty unique and not something that the Knicks can replicate in the same way. But is there anything the Knicks can take away from what the Cavs did against the Thunder down the stretch, or is there just a general formula for overcoming this team, at least a version of this team without Chet?
Yeah, I think that in the NBA in the regular season, the defensive intensity wanes sometimes from teams. If you can really lock in on the defensive end and force the Thunder into turnovers, then that really swings the game. Because when you look at this Thunder's team's identity, yes, they're going to get beat on the glass every night, and that's just due to only having one healthy center. But they make up for that by if you get beat on the glass, that's possessions. And at the end of the day, when you have a guy like Shai, you want to win the possession battle. That way you can win the game. Because if you give Shai more possessions to score, he's going to score. The Thunder are going to win because they're going to have more points. And so a way that they combat that is they protect the ball. They don't have many turnovers at all. And they turn you over a historic amount. Like up until this week, they had produced more steals than turnovers. So I think that in the last couple of games down the stretch against Boston, when Boston had a chance to win that game, it was careless turnovers from Shai. Against Cleveland, they went into that zone. It was careless turnovers that doomed their offense in the fourth quarter and lost them the game. If you can get to your kind of ability to play on a string and lock in defensively to create turnovers, then you now have 2 possession advantages than over just one. So that's a big deal. I think that making Jalen Williams, J-Dub, this comfort as a scorer, playing underneath him and getting some rim protection, boost whenever he's driving, and taking him away as a scorer, that is a big deal as well. And then it just comes down to poor shooting nights. I mean, if the Thunder shoot 36% or less, that they are having to squeak out games, which is still impressive to win, but it's not as though they're dominating those games. But once you let them not turn the ball over, get Jalen Williams comfortable, and shoot the ball 38% or better, then they start to snowball a game and really beat you up by double digits. So it's kind of all those things that you want to take away for every game against Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and I think that's almost discouraging for the Knicks because they did kind of win the possession battle, right? They took 6 more shots than the Thunder did in that first game. The Thunder did have 4 more free throws, so that was pretty even. The Knicks somehow had 1 less turnover, though I felt like Oklahoma City really tilted that in the fourth quarter, where they protected the ball, and the Knicks, after dominating in transition by getting out a bunch in the second quarter, couldn't really keep that up. Oklahoma City stopped turning it over. The Knicks started turning it over when they started blitzing Jalen Brunson, and he couldn't find Josh Hart on a couple of different occasions, as Oklahoma City, which we'll talk about, won that fourth quarter 37-19. But the single biggest factor, of course, was, to your point, like hoping for a cold shooting night from the Thunder role player. It was something I talked about on the preview pod I did of that game last week, and the Knicks simply did not get that, as Aaron Wiggins went 4 for 6 from 3. The second Jalen Williams, J. Will, went 2 for 3. Case and Wallace went 1 for 2. Dort went 3 for 5. Overall, the Thunder shoot 14 for 27. The Knicks shoot 9 for 32. And flipping that, though, I think a lot more goes into flipping that than just having a hot shooting night versus a cold shooting night, because you have to look at the quality of shots both teams are generating. But if the Knicks can flip that, they have a chance to win the game, is they actually, to your point, like the most basic fundamental against the Thunder, don't give them open court chances, take advantage of open court chances you do get. The Knicks, I think, did a great job of winning that battle. We will flip gears next. We're going to talk New York Knicks, some of their poor shooting of late, and how Oklahoma City beat them the first time around. All that and more next, right here on both Locked On Knicks and Locked On Thunder. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of endless waiting, wondering and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention, while you get real-time updates on their progress, so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, guys, we are back. It is a Locked On Knicks, Locked On Thunder crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Rylan, I will pass you the proverbial microphone. What do you want to know about the New York Knicks?
Yeah, so the first things first is just kind of what is the truth about the minute workload? I mean, obviously, it felt like Friday against Oklahoma City was an extreme because, as you mentioned, once you got into that game, regardless of what the plan was or what you've been doing all season long, it was different. The crowd was a playoff crowd. The physicality on the court was playoff physicality, and the emotional swings of that game were playoff-like. So I think that might have contributed to the fact that you had guys playing 40 minutes a night, all of your starters playing 40 minutes a night. So what's kind of been the night in, night out daily routine of like Tom Thibodeau's minutes with this team?
So I will start off by saying that I have vacillated on this a lot in terms of like the log view of Tom Thibodeau. In that early on, I had a lot of complaints, and there were injuries that happened because he just kept guys on the court during the blowout. Obviously, the most famous example of that in his coaching career was at this point almost 15 years ago with Derrick Rose blowing out his knee in a playoff game. They were up by 30. There have been examples of that in his time on the Knicks for sure. Last season, I thought it was kind of a BS national media narrative because the injuries were fluky. Like it was Julius Randle just like on a WrestleMania move, flipping over Jaime Jaquez and landing on his shoulder, right? That was not a product of minutes. That was a product of just a fluky play in a competitive game against a physical team. And the Knicks had a bunch of examples of that. And then once like all their depth was dead, they get into the playoffs and they're playing everyone 45 minutes and everyone's saying Tibbs is crazy. Guess what? Like you lose, you go home. They had to do that. And again, like all their guys were hurt, not because of minutes, just because like OG Anunoby gets hurt a lot and Julius Randle landed in a bad way. This season, I would say it's more so on Tibbs, where he is again keeping guys in like quite late in blowouts. And to his defense, like it does seem like every time they take the starters out, they immediately give up a 10-0 run late in games. So I think that's part of the logic, but it's obvious he's playing guys too many minutes. And I think OG Anunoby right now, like I hate to say this, I'm going to knock on wood as I do, feels like a ticking time bomb as someone who's missed 20 plus games essentially, I think every year of his career, except for one. And this year has played in every single game, is third in the NBA in total minutes. The three wings are 1, 2, and 3. You noted this on Locked On NBA in total minutes on the season. And it just doesn't feel sustainable. And in turn, I think where that's manifested on the court, fortunately, not in injuries, the Knicks have the second best injury luck in the NBA so far. I've lost, I think it was in terms of estimated plus minus or some advanced statistic, but they basically lost the second least amount of production in the NBA due to injuries. OG's played every game. Mikhail's played every game. Josh, Brunson, and Cat have combined to miss maybe 6 all year. But where that is hurting them is in their shooting. Over the last 9 games, they're 29th in the NBA in three-point percentage. Jalen Brunson, who is playing the least minutes out of any of these guys, so maybe he is less of an excuse, under 40%, 8 of his last 13 games. His last 9 games, he is just 6 for 43 from 3. That is 14%. Mikhail, after having a breakout game against the Spurs, is back to not shooting well again, 11 for 55 from 3 over those last 8 games. That is 20%. And OG Anunoby is great when he plays the Toronto Raptors, and he's basically, after an incredible start to the year, struggled against anyone else the last 20 games. So I think you're seeing some dead legs. They did really perk up against the Thunder. They did, after 2 horrible losses to the Bulls and Magic, perk up last night against the Raptors. So I'm hoping they bring their A game, but it would go a long way to get Deuce McBride back for this game.
Yeah, and Deuce was the guy that I thought that they were, of course, missing on Friday, just in the sense of whenever you saw them not be able to nurse that lead in the fourth quarter. I think that Deuce could have changed that, a little bit for the Knicks had he been healthy. But Karl-Anthony Towns, of course, the biggest storyline as you make the trade from Thunder division rival Minnesota Timberwolves to get him for Julius Randle. What has he opened up for New York, and what has surprised you the most about Cat? Like obviously when the Thunder or the Knicks make a trade, we kind of have these preconceived ideas of these players, and then watching them every single day and everything, you might change that thought. Has there anything that's been changed for you with Cat?
Sure. So I think the first thing is his toughness has kind of shocked me. After they acquired him, I used the word dog, DAWG, an unfortunate amount, questioning the quote unquote dog in Cat, and saying that this Knicks team, right, was defined, I think even outside of New York, by their toughness, by their hustle, sliding on the floor, battling for second and third opportunities. A lot of the same stuff that the Thunder's defined by, and this culture of almost Spartan-esque toughness and warrior mentality and just bullying other teams. And I was thinking, all right, is that going to go away with this guy who has been perceived as soft 10 years into his NBA career? And he is leading the charge on that front for the team. Right now he's playing through clearly a lot of pain in his knee, and I would expect him to do it again against Oklahoma City. He has been a bully in the post this year. He's been the best rebounder in the NBA, I think by a full rebound per game over Nikola Jokic right now. Just great toughness and physicality. In terms of what he opens up for the Knicks, it is just a more direct path to a great offense. 2 years ago, the Knicks were the third best offense in basketball, and they did it in a very uncharacteristic way. It was not modern basketball. It was rely on Jalen Brunson in an extremely cramped court to create magic out of nothing, which Jalen was good enough to do and is still good enough to do, and then just be the most dominant offensive rebounding team in basketball with Mitchell Robinson, with, of course, Thunder legend Isaiah Hartenstein, and that combination, and that got them to a top 3 offense. But that did not prove to be sustainable in the playoffs. And I think what's most encouraging about what Cat brings to the table is it feels like there isn't going to be a drop-off. And the Knicks, every single year under Tibbs, or at least let's just say the last 2 years, like the Jalen Brunson era, they have gone from a very good offense to a very poor offense in the playoffs, and they've gone from kind of a middling defense to an elite defense in the playoffs. And the question now is can the defense hold up? But the offense from Cat has been great, and the defense, the first 15 games or so, was awful, which is sort of what we expect, and the rim protection was really bad. He has been significantly better, and I actually thought the game against the Thunder might have been the apex of that. There were a few mistakes late that you live with, but the rim protection, the physicality, and of course rebounding is a big part of defense. He has brought a lot to the table on that end of the floor that has really surprised me.
And then you look at Josh Hart and how he gets used as a option for New York. Now, one of the things that the Knicks found success on with the Thunder, and they tried to go to it late and it didn't work, but that can kind of be your lasting memory of this action. But really, at the start of the game, was really effective. Whenever they would have the Thunder would have Hartenstein guarding Hart, that way Hartenstein could kind of roam around and not respect his 3-point shooting, even though it felt like Hart made a few more threes against OKC than he typically would. But they brought Josh Hart to the ball screening for Brunson, and got Hartenstein out of position to where then Hart rolled to the rim, Brunson found him, and that was an easy 2 points. And we saw against Cleveland where Hartenstein, Jay Will, and Kenrich all struggled in the pick and roll once you kind of brought them out to the perimeter. Obviously, the Thunder's best center at defending the pick and roll and defending it on the perimeter is Chet, and he's not going to play in this game. So is that how he's been used in general, or is that kind of just taking advantage of a situation that the Thunder present?
It has been a tool for Tom Thibodeau. And there was a game, I think it was the Nets game, where down the stretch they kept going to that Brunson Hart pick and roll over and over again, and Hart got like either layups or easy assists. But it's generally something that's pulled out when teams blitz Jalen Brunson. And the Thunder game was really fascinating because for a year now, the Knicks have torched teams on that, right? Because it is very analogous to what we've seen from Steph Curry and Draymond Green over the last decade in Golden State, where Steph has this incredible gravity. And obviously Jalen is not in the same universe as a shooter, but just because he is so dynamic as an isolation scorer, like teams desperately want to get the ball out of his hands. And Jalen has just become an expert at dragging out that double team, making it as painful as possible, extending the defense, breaking the defense as much as possible by pulling the double near half court, finding a way to get the ball out of his hands accurately with velocity on it to Josh Hart, and letting Josh Hart, who is just such an intelligent player, operate 4-on-3, spray out to shooters, hit the little push shot just inside the foul line, get all the way downhill and either get a layup or draw foul. And that is an area where Josh can thrive because I think his decision-making is simplified. And it's not that he needs simplified decision-making. It's just that when he catches it out from behind the arc, you see the hesitation because he does not want to shoot the three. When he catches at the foul line, his full game is at his disposal, and he can really take advantage of defenses. Where the Oklahoma City, I think, muddied the waters, and I would say, as far as my memory goes, became kind of the first team to just shut that down, is they didn't allow Jalen to make a clean pass. Like over and over again, they were like just really doing a really good job at the level, a lot of length, like iHeart, active hands. And there were, I think, 2 different throwaways from Jalen Brunson down the stretch of the game. And like at times where Josh was just a little hesitant, when Jalen, and I want to see more of this, would just attack the double. And this is what he did last game against the Raptors, where they blitz a lot, attack the outside foot of the big, turn the corner, and just break the defense. And Oklahoma City's as good as any team in the NBA playing in that chaos. But I still think that is a way to go. Hopefully he can just find a way to get the ball to Josh. Another thing they can do is move Josh a little closer to the ball instead of stationing him at the free throw line. But then, of course, you get less of a head start.
Yeah, it was a fun development as the season went on, as the game went on, because at the end, the biggest like turning point of that game, I felt like, was Hartenstein jumping a Hart screen and blitzing Brunson and forcing that turnover, forcing another fast break shot by Wiggins for 3, and boom, it's kind of just it felt like that was the final straw for that game. So we'll see how that adjustment gets made. We'll also talk more adjustments coming up. But first, I want to say right now, about good friends over at Rocket Money. Rocket Money has helped me find any subscription I need to find that I've probably forgotten about or was paying way more than I should be paying. It's helped me so much. For example, for some reason, I was paying for 2 music streaming services. Why on earth was I doing that? Rocket Money, it detected that for me and fixed it for me. That way I could save money. It's so easy to trace them all down. It's like having a personal assistant to your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app, and it helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and help you lower your bills so you can grow savings. It brings everyone together and everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions or your spending habits or even your goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved them a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year. And when using all the app's premium features, you can get those benefits. So again, for me, it's the best feature. It's the subscription tracker, because you know this as an NBA fan. There's like 17,000 stat websites, and you go and you try the 5-day trial. Maybe you forget to cancel it. Maybe you kind of got it on one email and then 2 emails, and you forgot to cancel the other one. Like, it's just going to be a lot to keep up with in this day and age of subscriptions. So I love their tracking features that make sure I'm not paying for something I don't want or don't use. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
All right, we are back on Locked On Knicks, Locked On Thunder. Adjustments heading into the next game. So here's my first question. Do you think the Thunder stick with J-Dub I get it mixed up sometimes, on Karl-Anthony Towns and Hartenstein guarding Hart, or do you think they mix that up early to throw the Knicks off? Because I see the pros and cons of both, and I would correct me if I'm off of this. I assume the basic premise is you just do not want Isaiah Hartenstein switching onto Jalen Brunson on the perimeter and pick and roll, even though Hartenstein is relatively good at sliding his feet, and we saw it in the best Knicks game in recent memory, that game 2 against the Thunder, where he chased down Tyrese Maxey, swatted him against the backboard. I'm sure Thunder fans have enjoyed similar exploits. That is not ideal. I don't think the Knicks were as good as they could have been posting up Karl-Anthony Towns in that first game, because it felt like whenever he did get the ball with deep post position against J-Dub, like he scored pretty much every time and did so pretty easily. It was more so that like the off-ball defense was so good, it was very, very difficult to get the ball to him. And we could talk about like strategies of how the Knicks can do that, and like flipping sides of the court to get it away from Hartenstein. But I'm curious if you assume that's going to be the matchup again, and how you kind of see the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I think that you're right of why the Thunder are doing that. But even in this game, you saw that Hartenstein, I mean, one of the biggest defensive possessions was Hartenstein getting switched on an island. I believe it was against OG, and staying in front, contesting the 3, forcing the miss, and the Thunder continued their run because of it. So, like, Hartenstein, of course, is no slouch on the perimeter, but it's also not ideal to have him on Cat, and that way you're having to guard Cat on the perimeter, you're having to switch on to Brunson, because they really do trust Jalen Williams against big bodies. They really do trust him in those situations. I mean, this guy played 2 weeks as a center himself. And so, like, I just think that they're going to continue to do that in this one. Now, you might see them, be quicker to switch that matchup possession by possession, or just kind of based upon how the thing is set up, because the Thunder are not shy with like one possession it's going one way, the next possession they've switched every single matchup, then the next possession they switch back. So I wouldn't say like every single time Cat's on the floor with J-Dub it'll be J-Dub guarding him, but I do think that that's how they're going to start.
Yeah, I think there are ways the Knicks can do better to take advantage of it. I want to shout out the breakdown video of the fourth quarter from, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, Bailey Liao of the Strickland, which of course my co-host Alex Wolf's website. Check that out if you're a Knicks fan, maybe if you're a Thunder fan and you want even more insight on this game. But what he pointed out, and something I noticed watching live, is when the Knicks took advantage of that, it was because they were able to keep Isaiah Hartenstein far enough from the play that he could not recover to help in the post. And the best way to do that is to not have Josh Hart be the entry passer, but be the hockey assist guy, right? Be the guy who sets up the entry pass. And the way he was able to do that was by drawing Hartenstein out on the perimeter, Thunder kind of gearing up to help for a drive, and then he would throw skip pass. Like my favorite one of the game was cross court to OG Anunoby, and you've Cat posting up on the corresponding block. Cat gets a seal on Jalen Williams, easy entry pass for OG. Cat gets a dunk on that one, and just again and again finding ways to I think it would be even more effective if you get Hartenstein in motion, right? And we saw that late in the game where it was kind of, I call it like a give and get. Like Mikal throws the ball to Josh Hart, sprints to his direction, dribble handoff. Hartenstein can't get out fast enough for 3. You can go about it that way. You can also take advantage of that by having Mikal then drive Hartenstein, kick it out, and maybe set up a post up, maybe get a spray out for a 3. Like I think the Knicks should relentlessly hunt Isaiah Hartenstein, which is weird to say for someone who I thought was one of the 10 best defenders in basketball. But that speaks to how incredible this Thunder defense is, that is who you have to hunt. But I do think, given how many options the Knicks have to be predatory, like that could be the guy to go at. Another thing I'm thinking in the 4-on-3, let me know what you think about this, and then we can get into like maybe some of the Thunder adjustments to do a little bit better. I think something the Knicks can do when the Thunder blitz the pick and roll with Hartenstein is instead of having Hart automatically be the guy at the foul line, move Cat up to the foul line, give Brunson a bigger target that he can just loft it up to, and then Cat can kind of be the playmaker at the foul line. He could hit Hart cutting to the basket, who at that point presumably would have no one on him, or he would have a lot of open space to attack one-on-one, middle of the floor against Jalen Williams. So that would be interesting. They can run the pick and rolls closer to the middle of the floor. I think there's a lot of things the Knicks can do to take advantage of Hartenstein on the perimeter that they maybe didn't fully lean into in game one.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that if you use Cat kind of as that safety valve after the Thunder are blitzing, that would be a much better option because I think that, no disrespect to Josh Hart, but obviously I think that Cat is a better scoring option, anywhere on the floor than Josh Hart is. And so that adds that element. It adds the element of the Thunder are notoriously, aggressive defensively. They're going to blitz you. They're going to play the passing lanes. And so that can also at times lead to being out of position if you gamble at the wrong time. And so you want to put them in as many situations where they have to make those decisions, because if you just try to isolate against the Thunder, they have some of the best point of attack defenders in the NBA, and they have the best defense in the NBA. It's not going to really work out for you, but it's kind of a risk reward thing for both sides. It's because if the Knicks want to just kind of fizz the ball around the perimeter, that you're opening yourself up to more chances for turnovers. However, you're also opening yourself up to more chances of, like, if you can be on your P's and Q's and make that read, make that pass, and get the Thunder out of position that way because they're gambling, then you can free up easier looks. So it's kind of a half a dozen in one and then six in the other, whatever. Like, what are you going to end up doing? I find interesting, but I would probably like to have Josh Hart, perhaps like go into the dunker spot, and like that's an area of the floor, of course, where Hartenstein has to respect him some, because like any player can make it from the dunker spot. So Hartenstein will stay with him, and then use Cat as the pick and roll, and maybe then you'll see, because the Thunder love to blitz and they also love to switch, but against a guy like Brunson, they also love to keep Lou Dort and keep him fighting through the screen. So if you use Cat, what you do then is you put the Thunder in a position where J-Dub feels like he can go guard Brunson, so he's going to go ahead and just jump the screen and make the switch. But Lou also wants to stay on Brunson because he's the best defender on the floor, and so he fights over the screen, and now nobody has Cat, nobody's home at all, and Hartenstein is all the way at the rim with Hart, and so you can just dump it down to Cat, and he can have a beautiful mid-range jumper that works out for him. So I just think that those two things are huge, and also the Knicks have to drive and kick a lot better, create space, and just drive and kick, because the Thunder are susceptible to giving up corner threes, and the Knicks can generate those by when the Thunder get smaller, when Hartenstein's off the floor especially, they can drive in, and then everyone on the perimeter has to kind of swarm the paint, because you have to try to take away an easy two, and that's whenever you can make that quick decision to get out to the corner three, and then knock that shot down. And that's how PJ Washington killed them yesterday. Max Strus killed them. You can get somebody hot in that way for New York.
Yeah, and I think Josh Hart short rolling, if you can get the ball to him, you're going to get a lot of corner threes off of that, and that is similar to how the Cavs attacked. I do think, to your point, there is an onus on guys other than Hart to be high-level passers in 4-on-3 situations. Like you saw, there was a play where they got OG on, like in the first half, OG and McHale were feasting on post-ups, and then Hartenstein was just a lot more aggressive helping to that. And OG just has to be able to kick it out in those situations. Like, he got blocked going for a dunk, but if he had adjusted in midair, he had McHale open in one corner, he had Josh Hart open on the wing. And if you can make passes there, if Cat, something he's really consistently struggled to do on the Knicks, can pass out of drives when he draws extra help, and he is going to draw extra help on drives with Jalen Williams on him, like that could be another way to generate open shots. We haven't talked a lot about the other side of the ball, where I know we're running a little long, so we can keep it pretty brief, but I thought the Knicks were mostly exceptional defensively in that game. And Mikal Bridges, like, it was easily the best half of defense he's played all year, like about as well as you could. I think SGA started something like 6 for 16, and Mikal was just amazing on him. OG was really good. Like, I think we said before the game, like, if you were to build a defender to try to slow down J-Dub, he would probably look a lot like OG Anunoby, and he lived up to that. I said it. I thought Cat was exceptional And in the second half, it just felt like, one, like SGA was SGA, and you're only going to keep him down for so long. Two, the Thunder role player, and sometimes it is this simple, like you're willing to give up some of those shots, and they were making those shots. Is there any adjustments you want to see from Oklahoma City to get off to a better start offensively, or does it just kind of rise and fall with the role guys hitting shots again?
Yeah, I think that the only adjustment really would be that Jalen Williams has to be more aggressive than he was in that game offensively.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Jalen Williams this year, consistently through the whole season, has played elite level defense. Offensively, he's kind of like it's weird because he's improved on paper. Like if you just go look at his basketball reference page, he's really improved. But watching him like in real time, he's regressed a little bit in the sense of his physicality and his kind of aggressiveness getting all the way to the rim. And so he needs to do that at a higher level against every team, but especially against New York, because you can't always count on getting hot from the outside with somebody on the roster, especially on the road, because role players typically play worse on the road than they do at home. But ultimately, to win this game, it would come down to staying true to your identity where you're going to play 10, 11, 12 guys even, which is what Mark does every single night, and just hoping that one of those guys like a Wiggins, like a Joe, like a Wallace, like one of those guys, all of a sudden you look up at the end of the game and they're 4 for 8, Lou Dort's 3 for 6 from 3, and Shai's had an MVP performance in the Garden, and J-Dub's had a bounce back game in the Garden, this magical place that teams love to go play. So I just think that it's going to take, to answer your question, another role player, whether it's Wiggins or somebody else, stepping up, and Jalen Williams giving you a little bit more offensively.
Do we think we're getting Caruso and AJ Mitchell for this one?
Caruso, possibly. AJ Mitchell, it's weird because it's kind of weird because it's a toe sprain,
Yeah.
and he just suffered it in the third quarter against New York.
Hmm.
We don't really know what that means. Like all we know is it's a toe sprain, but like sometimes a toe sprain could like mirror that of a broken toe, and like you wouldn't expect him to be back in a week. But sometimes a toe sprain is just a sprain, and he's fine. You can work with it after a little bit of time. So we haven't gotten clarity on that. So I have no idea if those two guys are going to play. Obviously, Chet is out for sure. Yeah. They have some G League guys out, but that doesn't really impact their rotation. But it's been a long time for Caruso. It wouldn't shock me if like Caruso is going to be in this game. I will say for Knicks fans, if either one of those two guys, Mitchell or Caruso, is upgraded to questionable, he's going to play. Like that's how the Thunder handle that situation. If they either stay out from the word go, or they go to questionable and they go play. Like I can't think of the last time that somebody has been upgraded to questionable and then still sat out. So you can just kind of keep an eye on that for this first injury report.
Yeah, and I think for the Knicks, you said it earlier, but Deuce McBride could entirely change the game for the Knicks. Like the Thunder were really able to take advantage of the Knicks bench, even though I think they mostly played fine. But that like game was defined in so many ways by when the stars were off the court. Like when Jalen was out of the game and Shai was in, you saw the Knicks able to play completely different defense. And OG Anunoby like heavily like doubling Shai as he'd go up for shots, and that really keyed. I think the Knicks winning the third quarter was OG's ability to help on Shai and just make like give Mikal that extra boost in that matchup. And on the flip side, when the Thunder started blitzing the pick and roll, if you thought they had struggles when Josh Hart was in the game, they had zero answers when Precious Achiuwa was in the game, because he just is not the kind of player to operate a 4-on-3, press an advantage. In Oklahoma City again and again, like made the Knicks feel pain for playing him on the floor offensively, not as the sole big. So I'm looking for those minutes. And if Deuce can play, that is a completely different option, because you actually have someone who's confident creating his own offense, someone who out of a 4-on-3, if he gets an open wing 3, you're assuming it's going in, instead of the way Landry Shamet shot, which has been terrible so far, or campaign where you're just kind of praying it's a night where one of those guys are hot. Rylan, this was a blast, buddy. I'm hoping we get to do this again in June, and it's an NBA Finals preview. But until that point, if Knicks fans are interested in checking out one of the great competitors out West, where can they find Locked On Thunder?
You can find Locked On Thunder anywhere you get your podcast from. Of course, you can find me at Rylan_Stiles. You can find both of us on Locked On NBA Game Nights on Saturday nights, recapping the Saturday slate of NBA games. So Sunday morning, really, for most of you who are night owls. But it's been a lot of fun this season. It'll be a lot of fun this week as well. So, Gavin, this was also a great time. And hopefully, come June, we'll be doing this again.
Yeah, on both Locked On Knicks and Locked On Thunder and Locked On NBA. You get the preview on all 3 pods. And of course, for Thunder fans listening, you can find me over at Locked On Knicks on Twitter, and of course, wherever podcasts can be found. Until next time, he's Rylan. I'm Gavin. We'll talk to you soon on both Locked On Knicks and Locked On Thunder.